Before we begin, a quick and important disclaimer. The following content is provided strictly for educational and entertainment purposes. It does not constitute legal, financial, or professional real estate advice. Real estate laws and divorce proceedings vary significantly by state and jurisdiction, and the historical data presented reflects broader trends rather than specific individual outcomes. You should always consult with a licensed attorney, a certified financial planner, or a qualified real estate professional before making any decisions regarding property division, litigation, or investment. Viewers are encouraged to conduct their own due diligence and recognize that historical performance is not an indicator of future results. Every 13 seconds, a marriage in the United States dissolves. While the emotional toll of these statistics is often the focus of modern discourse, there is a massive multi-billion-dollar infrastructure churning beneath the surface that most people never see until they are standing in the middle of it. In the center of this storm is a specific kind of professional whose role has evolved from a generalist salesperson to a high-stakes litigation mediator: the divorce real estate agent. For decades, the real estate industry treated divorce sales as just another listing, a standard transaction that happened to have two signatures on the deed. But history shows us a much more complex picture. We are currently witnessing a massive demographic shift in who these agents are, how they are trained, and why they have become the most critical neutral third party in the American judicial system. This video is the first part of a deep dive masterclass into the history, the data, and the evolution of the divorce real estate niche. By the end of this series, you will understand how the legal revolution of the late 1960s created a new class of professional, why the silver splitter demographic is currently reshaping the housing market, and how the modern agent navigates the intersection of family law and property rights to solve the most expensive problem facing American families today. To understand where the divorce real estate agent stands today, we must first look at the demographic landscape of the early 20th century, a time when the divorce agent practically did not exist. Prior to the mid-1960s, divorce in the United States was largely fault-based. This meant that in order to end a marriage, one party had to prove wrongdoing, such as adultery, cruelty, or abandonment. Because the legal hurdles were so high and the social stigma was so heavy, the volume of property transfers resulting from divorce was statistically negligible compared to today's standards. Real estate agents in the 1940s and 50s were predominantly men, often working in a generalist capacity. Property was frequently held in the husband's name, or the legal framework surrounding coverture, and early dower rights made the division of the marital home a one-sided affair. There was no need for a specialist because the dispute over the home was often settled by the total displacement of one spouse, usually the wife, or a court-ordered liquidation that favored the innocent party. The demographic earthquake hit in 1969, when then-Governor Ronald Reagan signed the Family Law Act in California. He inadvertently sparked a national trend toward no-fault divorce. Suddenly, the floodgates opened. Between 1960 and 1980, the divorce rate in the United States more than doubled. This created a massive problem for the real estate industry. Suddenly, thousands of homes were hitting the market not because a family was upsizing or relocating for a job, but because the owners could no longer stand to be in the same room. The generalist real estate agents of the 1970s were woefully unprepared for this shift. They found themselves caught in the middle of domestic violence restraining orders, hidden assets, and spouses who would intentionally sabotage a sale just to spite their ex-partner. This was the era where the industry realized that selling a divorce house required more than just a for sale sign. It required a demographic of agents who understood the psychological and legal nuances of conflict. As we look at the historical trends, we see that the demographics of the agents themselves began to shift in response to this need. In the 1980s and 90s, as more women entered the real estate workforce, they began to dominate the divorce niche. Data from the National Association of Realtors suggests that women often gravitated toward these roles because they frequently possessed the high-level communication skills and empathy required to manage high-conflict emotional environments. However, empathy alone wasn't enough. The historical record shows a professionalization of the niche starting in the early 2000s. Case studies from this era highlight the emergence of the Certified Divorce Real Estate Expert, or CDRE. This wasn't just a marketing title. It was a response to the legal system's demand for neutrality. Judges and family law attorneys realized they couldn't just appoint any agent to sell a contested property. They needed someone who understood the difference between a separate property claim and community property interests. They needed someone who could testify in court about the fair market value, without being impeached for bias toward the husband or the wife. The modern demographic profile of a successful divorce real estate agent is a fascinating case study in professional evolution. Today, these specialists are typically seasoned veterans with at least 10 to 15 years of general real estate experience before they even touch a divorce file. Why? Because the technical complexity of these sales is immense. Consider the demographic of the silver divorcee, couples over the age of 50 who are ending long-term marriages. This is one of the fastest-growing demographics in the United States. In these cases, the real estate agent isn't just dealing with a house. They are dealing with 30 years of equity, complex tax implications under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and the potential need for buying out a spouse using retirement accounts. The agent must be a demographic bridge between the legal world of the courthouse and the financial world of the mortgage lender. If we look at the geographic demographics, we see that the need for these specialists is not uniform across the country. Historically, high-growth states like Florida, Texas, and California see the highest demand for divorce real estate specialists. This is due to a combination of high property values, complex state laws regarding community property, and a higher-than-average population of transient families. In these markets, the agent's role has expanded into a project manager for the court. They are often tasked with coordinating repairs, managing the removal of junk left behind by an angry spouse, and ensuring that the house is show-ready, despite the fact that one or both parties may be actively trying to prevent the sale. Step by step, the divorce real estate niche has transformed from a hustle into a highly regulated, education-based discipline. To be a specialist in today's market, the agent must master three distinct pillars. First is the legal pillar, understanding the orders of the court and how to remain neutral under cross-examination. Second is the financial pillar, knowing how to navigate the middling effect, where one spouse wants a high price and the other wants a quick exit. Third is the psychological pillar, managing the grief cycle of the sellers. Historical data shows that agents who lack training in these three areas have a significantly higher failure rate in closing divorce listings, often leading to the property languishing on the market or the agent being dismissed by the judge. This demographic history teaches us that the divorce real estate agent is a mirror of American society. As our laws evolved to favor individual autonomy and equitable distribution, the professional tasked with liquidating the American dream had to evolve as well. We are no longer in the era of the friendly neighbor agent who happens to help a friend in a tough spot. We are in the era of the litigation-trained specialist who operates with the precision of a court officer. This deep dive into the history and demographics of the niche is just the beginning. As we move into the next parts of this masterclass, we will explore the specific financial mechanics, the case studies of high-conflict sales, and the actual step-by-step process used by top-tier agents to protect the equity of families in transition. The evolution of this role is not just about real estate. It is about how we as a culture handle the intersection of love, law, and the largest asset we will ever own. To understand the demographic profile of the modern divorce real estate agent in 2026, we have to look at the intersection of psychology, law, and high-stakes negotiation. Historically, the agent was a secondary thought in a divorce case, often someone's cousin or a friend from the gym. But as we move through 2026, the data shows a radical shift toward a professional demographic that looks more like a forensic accountant than a traditional salesperson. The modern specialist in this field is typically between 45 and 60 years old, possesses a background in conflict resolution or paralegal studies, and has spent over a decade navigating the volatile cycles of the American housing market. Imagine a scenario in 2026 involving a couple we will call Robert and Sarah. They have been married for 22 years and own a suburban home in a high-demand market like North Carolina or Arizona. They have a 3% interest rate on a mortgage they secured back in 2020. This is what historical trends now call the golden handcuffs. In previous decades, selling the house was a simple math problem of dividing equity. In 2026, the demographic of the divorce agent must solve a much more complex puzzle: how to liquidate a marital asset when neither party can afford a new mortgage at current 7% rates. This specific economic pressure has forced the demographic of divorce agents to become experts in creative financing and court-ordered petitions. Historical trends from the mid-2010s to the present day show that approximately 68% of specialized divorce real estate agents are women. This demographic trend is not accidental. Case studies suggest that high-conflict legal environments often require a communicative style that prioritizes de-escalation over aggressive sales tactics. In a standard real estate transaction, the agent's goal is to get the highest price for the seller. In a divorce transaction, the agent's primary goal is often neutrality and liability protection. If an agent speaks more to the husband than the wife or vice versa, they risk being accused of bias, which can lead to a court hearing, a formal complaint to the real estate commission, or the entire sale being voided by a judge. Let us look at the step-by-step evolution of how an agent in 2026 handles a listing compared to the generalist of the 1990s. In 1995, an agent might walk into a home, see a couple in a heated argument, and try to play therapist to get a signature on a listing agreement. In 2026, a professional like Elena, a specialist in the Austin, Texas market, follows a rigid protocol rooted in forensic neutrality. Step 1 is the intake process. Elena does not meet the couple together. She conducts separate interviews to identify if there are restraining orders, pending motions for exclusive use of the property, or hidden liens. Step 2 involves a deep dive into the title report. In the current year, we see a rise in cases where one spouse has taken out a secret home equity line of credit or failed to pay property taxes as a form of financial sabotage. The demographic of the successful divorce agent is someone who knows how to read a preliminary title report like a crime scene investigator. The demographic data also reveals that the most successful divorce agents in 2026 are those who have moved away from traditional marketing. Instead of hosting open houses with cookies and balloons, they are spending their time in the hallways of the county courthouse. They are building relationships with the demographic of family law attorneys and mediators. This is because the referral source for divorce real estate has shifted. Historically, it was a consumer-driven choice. Today, it is a court-driven choice. Judges are tired of cases being delayed because a standard real estate agent did not know how to handle a spouse who refused to sign the closing documents. Therefore, the demographic of the agent has shifted towards someone who is comfortable testifying as an expert witness. Imagine if you were a judge overseeing a messy dissolution in 2026. You have a husband who refuses to move out and a wife who refuses to lower the price. A standard agent would likely give up or choose a side. A specialized divorce agent, however, provides the court with a weekly status report that tracks every showing, every piece of feedback, and every instance of non-cooperation. This data-driven approach is a hallmark of the 2026 demographic. They are not just selling houses, they are providing the court with the evidence needed to issue an order for the leaser, which allows the court clerk to sign the deed on behalf of a non-cooperative spouse. Another critical demographic shift we are seeing in 2026 is the rise of the bilingual or culturally specialized divorce agent. As the United States demographic continues to diversify, the complexities of divorce real estate intersect with cultural norms regarding property ownership and multi-generational housing. In some communities, the marital home might also house elderly parents or extended family members who have no legal claim to the property, but have a massive emotional and logistical stake in the sale. The 2026 specialist must navigate these delicate layers while adhering to the strict letter of the law. Data from recent case studies shows that properties listed with a specialized divorce agent sell an average of 15% faster than those listed with a generalist in the same high-conflict category. This is not because of a magic marketing trick, but because of the agent's ability to manage the communication loop. In a standard sale, communication is a straight line. In a divorce sale, communication is a web involving the husband, the wife, the husband's attorney, the wife's attorney, the mediator, and the court. The demographic of the agent must be someone with high-level systems in place to ensure that every single person in that web receives the exact same information at the exact same time. One misplaced email or a phone call that wasn't logged can lead to a motion for sanctions. We must also consider the demographic of the property itself. In 2026, we are seeing a massive trend in the division of complex assets, such as short-term rental properties or homes with accessory dwelling units. The historical trends of the 1980s focused on the single-family suburban home. Today, the divorce agent might be tasked with liquidating a portfolio of 5 properties across 3 states, all while one spouse is living in a basement apartment and the other is in a different time zone. The agent who can navigate the interstate tax implications and the logistics of managing remote properties, while under a court order, represents the top 1% of the demographic. As we look toward the future of this professional niche, the demographic of the divorce agent is becoming increasingly younger and more tech-savvy. While the veterans still hold the majority of the market share, a new wave of professionals in their late 30s is entering the field, bringing with them a mastery of digital forensics and virtual mediation tools. They are using specialized software in 2026 that allows spouses to sign documents in separate digital rooms, ensuring they never have to interact, which significantly reduces the risk of conflict-related delays. The problem this solves for the American audience today is the preservation of generational wealth. Divorce is often the single greatest destroyer of a family's net worth. Between legal fees, double housing costs, and the potential for a fire sale of the family home, the losses can be staggering. The emergence of this highly specialized demographic of real estate agents is a direct response to the need for asset protection. They are the guardians of the equity that families have spent decades building. But what happens when the conflict isn't just about the price? What happens when one spouse is actively trying to destroy the house from the inside out just to lower its value? How does the agent handle a situation involving domestic violence or substance abuse, while still fulfilling their fiduciary duty to the court? These are the high-stakes questions that define the daily life of a divorce real estate specialist. In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to dive into the dark side of divorce real estate. We will analyze real-world case studies where agents had to deal with physical threats, property sabotage, and the legal maneuvers used to protect the house when things get dangerous. We will look at the specific clauses that must be in a divorce listing agreement to prevent a sale from collapsing at the 11th hour. You will see exactly how the top agents in 2026 protect themselves and their clients' equity when the courtroom drama spills over into the living room. When the courtroom drama spills over into the living room, the first casualty is almost always the condition of the property itself. To understand the demographic of the divorce real estate agent in 2026, you have to understand that they are essentially managing a crime scene in slow motion. Historically, property sabotage was a crude affair. In the 1980s, an angry spouse might have simply taken a sledgehammer to the drywall or removed the copper piping before an inspection. But as we move through 2026, the tactics of domestic asset devaluation have become significantly more sophisticated, requiring the agent to possess a level of technical and legal intuition that was never required in decades past. Imagine if you are an agent named Mark working in a suburb of Seattle. You are representing a couple, Kevin and Stacy, who are in the middle of a high-conflict litigation process. Kevin has been ordered by the court to vacate the property by the end of the month so that the house can be staged and sold. However, Kevin feels that the house is the only leverage he has left. In the 2026 landscape, Kevin doesn't need a sledgehammer. He simply logs into the Smart Home Hub and changes the administrative credentials for the HVAC system, the security cameras, and the smart locks. When Mark arrives with a potential buyer, the house is 85 degrees, the alarm is blaring, and the digital locks are unresponsive. This is the new frontier of property sabotage, and the demographic of the successful divorce agent is shifting toward professionals who understand digital forensics and IoT security. Historical trends show that property sabotage is often motivated by a psychological phenomenon known as the scorched earth policy. One spouse decides that if they cannot have the full value of the home, then neither party should benefit from it. In previous historical eras such as the post-2008 financial crisis, we saw a massive spike in intentional neglect. Spouses would stop watering the lawn, allow the pool to turn into a swamp, or ignore a leaking roof. In 2026, the specialized agent has a step-by-step protocol to prevent this. It begins with the divorce listing addendum. This is a document that sits on top of the standard state-mandated listing agreement. It is a technical manual for behavior. It specifies that the property must be maintained in showing condition at all times, defines exactly what showing condition means, and outlines the financial penalties for non-compliance. The modern agent must be a master of documentation because their notes often become Exhibit A in a contempt of court hearing. Consider a case study from early 2026 in Florida. An agent was tasked with selling a multi-million-dollar waterfront property where the husband remained in the home. Every time a showing was scheduled, the husband would ensure his 3 large, aggressive dogs were roaming the front yard, effectively preventing any buyer from entering. In a standard real estate transaction, an agent might just complain to the other spouse. But the specialized divorce agent documented every instance, took time-stamped photos of the dogs, and compiled a report showing that the husband's actions resulted in a 20% decrease in showing traffic over a 30-day period. This data allowed the wife's attorney to file a motion for exclusive use and possession, resulting in the husband being forcibly removed from the property by the sheriff so the sale could proceed. Step by step, the professionalization of this niche has led to a requirement for agents to understand the concept of waste. In a legal context, waste refers to the unreasonable or improper use of land by an individual in rightful possession of the land. Historically, proving waste was difficult and expensive. Today, the demographic of the divorce agent includes those who use 3D home scanning technology not just for marketing, but for baseline documentation. On the day the listing agreement is signed, the agent performs a high-resolution 3D scan of the entire interior. If 2 months later, the appliances are missing or the hardwood floors are scratched, the agent has indisputable digital evidence of the property's prior condition. This level of detail is what separates the modern specialist from the generalist, who is simply hoping everyone gets along. The demographic of the agent also has to account for the safety of the professionals involved. In 2026, we are seeing a rising trend of agents who specialize in restraining order sales. These are situations where one party is legally barred from being within a certain distance of the other. The agent becomes the sole point of contact. This requires a demographic of agents who are not just empathetic, but also highly trained in situational awareness and de-escalation. Historical data from the Department of Justice regarding domestic disputes shows that the period of property division is one of the most volatile times for families. The agent, therefore, often works in tandem with private security or local law enforcement to ensure that open houses and inspections do not become flashpoints for violence. Furthermore, the 2026 agent must navigate the complexities of the silent saboteur. This is the spouse who appears cooperative on the surface but subtly undermines the sale. Imagine if Stacy, in our Seattle scenario, agrees to every showing but leaves sensitive items out in the open. Divorce papers on the kitchen island, half-packed boxes in the hallways, or unwashed dishes in the sink. These are psychological cues to a buyer that the house is a distressed sale, which almost always leads to lower offers. The specialized agent identifies these patterns early. They don't just ask the spouse to clean up. They negotiate a third-party maintenance fund as part of the listing agreement. This fund, taken from the future proceeds of the sale, pays for a professional cleaning crew and a stager who has the authority to enter the home and prepare it for showings regardless of the occupant's mood. This brings us to the critical evolution of the leaser process. In U.S. history, the concept of an leaser, a person appointed by the court to sign documents when a party refuses to do so, was a rare legal maneuver. In 2026, it is becoming a standard tool for the high-volume divorce real estate agent. When a spouse refuses to sign a closing disclosure because they are trying to stall the inevitable, the agent doesn't beg or plead. They provide the attorneys with a certificate of non-compliance. This document outlines the agent's attempts to secure the signature and the lack of a valid reason for the refusal. This is the demographic shift we keep coming back to. The agent as a court-adjacent professional who understands that their duty is to the equity of the estate, not the whims of the individuals. As we look at the historical trends of the mid-2020s, we see that the most successful agents in this niche are those who can balance the cold reality of the law with the hot emotions of the kitchen table. They are the ones who can look a homeowner in the eye and explain that while they understand the pain of the divorce, the court only cares about the preservation of the asset. This requires a specific personality demographic, people who are comfortable with conflict, and who do not have a people-pleasing temperament. They must be able to say no to a spouse who wants to overprice the home as a stalling tactic, and they must be able to stand their ground when an attorney tries to pressure them into a biased valuation. But even with the most airtight listing agreement and the best security protocols, there is one area that remains the ultimate hurdle for the divorce real estate agent: the money. Not just the final check at the end, but the intricate web of debt, tax liens, and hidden equity that can surface just days before a sale is supposed to close. What happens when the agent discovers that the clear title they were promised is actually buried under a mountain of undisclosed debt? How does the demographic of the 2026 agent handle the financial saboteur, who isn't trying to break the house, but is trying to steal the equity before the ink is dry? In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to pull back the curtain on the world of forensic real estate finance. We will explore how agents in 2026 are using blockchain-verified title searches to uncover hidden liens, how they manage the nightmare of the underwater divorce in a fluctuating market, and the exact step-by-step process for ensuring that the proceeds of a sale actually make it to the correct bank accounts. You will see how the modern agent acts as a financial bodyguard for the marital estate, protecting the family's future from the mistakes of their past. The role of the divorce real estate agent in 2026 has transitioned into that of a financial detective. Historically, an agent would pull a preliminary title report and assume it told the whole story. But in today's landscape, the demographic of the elite divorce specialist knows that the title report is often just the opening chapter of a very long and potentially dark book. Financial sabotage is no longer just about hiding cash in a suitcase. It is about burying debt into the equity of the marital home. To protect the family's future, the modern agent must understand the mechanics of forensic real estate finance with the precision of an auditor. Imagine a case study involving a couple named David and Sarah in 2026. They are selling a $400,000 home in Ohio. On the surface, they have $200,000 in equity. However, David, sensing the impending divorce 6 months ago, secretly took out a high-interest private loan and recorded a memorandum of agreement against the property title. He did this not to improve the home, but to extract cash that he then funneled into an offshore account or a digital wallet. In a standard transaction, this might not be discovered until 3 days before closing, potentially causing the entire deal to collapse and triggering massive legal fees. The 2026 demographic of divorce agents prevents this through what we now call the blockchain verified title protocol. As of 2026, several high-growth counties in the United States have moved their land records to decentralized ledgers. This allows a specialized agent to track the exact timestamp of every lien, encumbrance, or deed transfer in real time. By monitoring these digital footprints from the moment the listing is signed, the agent can identify unauthorized debt before it becomes a terminal problem for the sale. This is a massive shift from historical trends where agents were often the last to know about financial encumbrances. Step by step, the modern agent's financial protocol begins with the immediate filing of a lease pendens if the situation warrants it. A lease pendens is a formal notice that a lawsuit is pending that affects the title to the property. In a divorce context, this is a critical defensive maneuver. It effectively freezes the equity, signaling to any predatory lenders that the property is under the jurisdiction of a family court. The specialized agent coordinates with the attorneys to ensure this notice is filed correctly, preventing either spouse from further encumbering the asset while the sale is active. We must also analyze the rising trend of the underwater divorce in the 2026 market. Then there is the issue of the IRS. Tax liens are one of the most common hidden obstacles in a divorce sale. In many cases, one spouse may be unaware that the other has failed to pay federal income taxes or has incurred payroll tax penalties from a struggling small business. These liens attach to all property owned by the taxpayer, including the marital home. Historically, these were often discovered too late. In 2026, the elite agent performs a thorough public records search not just for the property, but for the individuals themselves. If a lien is discovered, the agent must navigate the complex process of a certificate of discharge, which allows the IRS to release the lien from the specific property being sold so that the title can pass to the buyer, while the debt follows the responsible spouse or is paid out of their specific share of the proceeds. This leads to the most critical part of the financial bodyguard role: protecting the proceeds. In 2026, the standard practice for a divorce agent is to use a court-ordered escrow agreement. Imagine if Sarah, in our Ohio case study, is worried that David will try to intercept the closing check or move the funds out of a joint account the moment the sale closes. The specialized agent ensures that the escrow instructions are crystal clear and backed by a court order. These instructions dictate that the funds are not released to the parties directly, but are instead wired into a blocked account or a trust account managed by the attorneys. Step by step, the agent must verify the wiring instructions multiple times. In the current year, wire fraud targeting real estate transactions has reached record highs. For a couple in divorce, the loss of their home equity to a cybercriminal is a catastrophe from which most never recover. The 2026 agent uses multi-factor authentication and encrypted communication portals to ensure that every dollar of the family's equity is fenced off from both external hackers and internal sabotage. Data from the historical trends of 2024 through 2026 indicates that agents who implement these high-level financial safeguards see a 40% reduction in post-closing litigation. By being the one who uncovers the secret loan, the unfiled tax return, or the fraudulent lien early in the process, the agent saves the family tens of thousands of dollars in additional attorney fees that would have been spent fighting over the mess after the fact. The demographic of the divorce agent is also changing in how they handle the sale of a home when one spouse is a business owner. In 2026, many homes are used as collateral for business lines of credit. If the business is failing or in dispute, the home is at risk. The agent must be able to read a balance sheet and understand the piercing of the corporate veil to to determine if a business creditor has a legitimate claim against the residents. This level of depth is what defines the masterclass level of service. As we have seen, the financial stakes in a 2026 divorce sale are higher than they have ever been in U.S. history. The agent is no longer just opening doors, they are closing loopholes. They are the ones standing between a family's net worth and a total financial collapse. But even after the finances are secured and the title is cleared, there is a whole other level of complexity that involves the physical transition of the property. What happens when a spouse refuses to leave even after the house is sold? How do you handle a physical eviction of a former owner in the middle of a suburb without destroying the property value or the neighborhood's perception of the home? And more importantly, how do you market a house that everyone knows is being sold because of a broken home, without attracting predatory lowball offers from investors? In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to explore the art of the invisible divorce sale. We will break down the specific marketing strategies used in 2026 to mask the distress of a divorce, the psychology of the neutral stager, and the secret tactics agents use to manage the holdout spouse, who is determined to stay in the house until the very last second. You will learn how the top 1% of agents maintain a property's premium value, even when the owners are at war. To maintain a property's premium value when the owners are at war, the modern divorce real estate agent in 2026 must master the art of the invisible divorce sale. This is not merely a marketing gimmick. It is a tactical necessity rooted in the psychology of the American buyer. Historical trends have shown that when a buyer senses blood in the water, specifically the blood of a dying marriage, their first instinct is to lower their offer. In the mid-2010s, this was often referred to as the divorce discount, a phenomenon where properties sold for significantly less than their fair market value, simply because the sellers lacked the appearance of leverage. By 2026, the elite demographic of agents has developed a sophisticated system to completely mask this distress, ensuring that the property is judged on its merits, rather than the marital status of its owners. Imagine a scenario in 2026 involving Jackson and Mia, a couple in Atlanta whose high-value suburban home is their largest asset. Mia has already moved out to a condo downtown, taking half of the furniture and leaving the house looking skeletal and neglected. Jackson, who remains in the home, is bitter and has allowed the landscaping to overgrow while leaving his half-packed boxes in plain sight. This is a classic case study in visible distress. A generalist agent would simply list the house as is, perhaps adding a note in the confidential agent remarks that the seller is motivated. To a specialized divorce agent, this is professional malpractice. The first step in the 2026 protocol is the neutrality sweep. The agent brings in a neutral stager, a professional who is specifically trained to work in high-conflict environments. The neutral stager does not just add a few throw pillows, they act as a forensic curator. Their mission is to remove every single marker of the divorce. This includes removing the mismatched furniture remnants, hiding the empty closets that signal a departed spouse, and most importantly, neutralizing the sensory environment. Case studies from early 2026 show that buyers are subconsciously influenced by the presence of his and hers items that are no longer paired. If there is only one toothbrush in a master bathroom built for two, the buyer's brain registers a vacancy. The neutral stager restores the illusion of a harmonious, occupied home, even if that means renting an entire house worth of furniture to replace what was lost in the split. Next, the agent must address the marketing language. In U.S. history, the phrase motivated seller was the ultimate signal for predatory lowballing. In 2026, the demographic of successful divorce agents has completely purged this from their vocabulary. Instead, they focus on the property as a standalone investment. They produce a high-definition, 3D virtual tour that is filmed only after the neutrality sweep is complete. This ensures that the first impression a buyer has is one of stability and luxury. The agent also creates a detailed property disclosure packet that is provided up front. By being hyper-transparent about the roof's age, the HVAC's maintenance records, and the property's boundaries, the agent signals that the sellers are in a position of strength and organization, not a position of desperation. But what happens when one spouse is a holdout? This is the demographic of the occupant who refuses to leave or sabotages the sale because the house represents their last piece of control. In 2026, the specialized agent uses a step-by-step legal integration process known as the Occupancy and Maintenance Agreement, or OMA. This is a document that the agent insists be signed and often turned into a court order before the sign ever goes in the yard. The OMA defines exactly what surety condition looks like. down to the temperature of the home and the absence of pets during tours. If Jackson, our character in Atlanta, refuses to vacate for a or leaves the house in disarray, the OMA provides a pre-negotiated financial penalty that is deducted from his share of the equity at closing. This shifts the motivation from emotional spite to financial self-interest, which is often the only language a holdout spouse understands. Historical trends also point to the rise of the shadow listing in 2026. This is a strategy where the agent markets the home to a curated list of high-intent buyers and fellow specialists before it ever hits the public market. This prevents the days on market counter from climbing if the couple has a public spat that delays a showing. In a divorce, time is the enemy of value. The longer a house sits, the more the public assumes there is a legal or structural problem. By using a shadow listing, the agent can vet buyers and ensure that only the most serious, non-predatory offers are brought to the table, maintaining the property's aura of exclusivity. Furthermore, the 2026 agent must manage the logistics of separate entrances and separate communication. If the couple cannot be in the same room, the agent ensures they never have to be. For showings, the agent might use a dual-access digital lock system where each spouse has a unique code, allowing the agent to track exactly who entered the home and when. This data is crucial. If a spouse claims they didn't know a showing was happening, the agent can provide a digital log showing they received the notification and acknowledged it. This level of technical detail protects the agent from being dragged into the middle of a he said, she said argument and keeps the focus entirely on the transaction. Step by step, the agent also manages the emotional temperature of the neighborhood. In a divorce, neighbors often become a source of leaked information. A buyer might walk across the street and ask a neighbor, "So why are they moving?" If the neighbor says, "Oh, they're having a nasty divorce," the leverage is gone. The 2026 specialist agent often does a preemptive neighborhood canvass, not to sell the house, but to set the narrative. They inform the neighbors that the sellers are moving for a new opportunity and ask for their help in keeping the street quiet and presentable. By controlling the information flow at the street level, the agent builds a protective shell around the property's value. This part of the masterclass reveals that the demographic of the divorce real estate agent is as much about psychological warfare as it is about property valuation. They are the directors of a high-stakes play where the audience must never know the actors are fighting behind the curtain. The goal is a seamless, boring transaction that looks exactly like every other sale on the block. When the agent succeeds, the buyers pay a premium price for a premium home, and the family's equity is preserved for their next chapter. But what occurs when the house finally sells? The ink is dry, and it is time to actually divide the money. This is where the most dangerous traps are laid. In the world of 2026 real estate, the closing table is often a minefield of last-minute liens, unexpected tax consequences, and the sudden appearance of the dreaded hidden creditor. How does the agent ensure that a spouse doesn't walk away with the entire check, leaving the other with nothing but a legal bill? How do they handle the specialized tax laws of 2026 that can turn a profitable sale into a massive liability if the timing isn't perfect? In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to dive into the endgame, the closing table combat. We will examine the exact legal mechanisms used to secure the proceeds, the role of the qualified diversified trust in divorce sales, and the step-by-step checklist every agent uses to prevent a last-second collapse. You will see how the top agents in the country ensure that the end of the marriage doesn't mean the end of the family's financial security. The closing table in 2026 is no longer a physical mahogany desk in a quiet title office. It is a digital battlefield where the final remnants of a marital estate are either secured or squandered. Historically, the closing was the finish line, but in the modern era of high-conflict divorce, it is the most volatile point of the entire transaction. The demographic of the elite divorce real estate agent has evolved to treat this moment as a high-stakes forensic audit. To understand how we arrived here, we must look at the shift from the unified closings of the 1990s to the fractured, separate room signing protocols that define the current year. In 1995, even in a divorce, it was common for both parties to sit in the same room to sign away the family home. There was a social pressure to maintain a facade of civility. By 2026, that social contract has completely evaporated. Today, the specialized agent manages two entirely separate closing processes that occur simultaneously, but in total isolation. This demographic shift is driven by a necessity to prevent what historical trends identify as the 11th hour veto. This is the moment where one spouse, overcome by the realization that their old life is truly ending, refuses to sign the final digital disclosure, effectively holding the buyer's earnest money and the other spouse's future hostage. Imagine a case study in Phoenix involving Marcus and Brenda. They are selling a mid-century modern home valued at $850,000. The market in 2026 is efficient, and they have a solid buyer at a premium price. However, Marcus has been living in the guest house and has grown increasingly resentful of the move-out date. As the digital closing documents are sent via secure portal at 9 a.m. on a Friday, Marcus simply goes dark. He does not answer his phone and he does not log into the portal. In a standard transaction, the agent would be panicking. In a specialized divorce transaction, the agent has already prepared for this scenario with a court-ordered specific performance clause. This clause, pre-negotiated by the agent and the attorneys weeks in advance, stipulates that if a signature is not received within 4 hours of the closing window, the court-appointed receiver or leaser has the authority to sign on his behalf. The demographic of the 2026 agent is defined by this level of pessimistic preparation. They do not assume a closing will happen until the wire confirmation hits the bank. One of the most critical financial hurdles they navigate is the Section 121 exclusion for capital gains. Historically, a married couple filing jointly could exclude up to $500,000 in gain from the sale of their primary residence. In 2026, with property values having surged, this exclusion is the difference between a family walking away with their equity or losing a massive chunk of it to the IRS. The agent must ensure the timing of the sale aligns with the legal definition of a primary residence. If Brenda moved out 18 months ago and the divorce has dragged on, she risks losing her half of that exclusion, unless the agent has coordinated with her tax professional to ensure the marital settlement agreement preserves her interest in the home for tax purposes. Step by step, the 2026 agent's closing checklist is a masterclass in risk mitigation. Step 1 is the 48-hour title refresh. In the final 2 days before a sale, a specialized agent orders a supplemental title search. This is because historical trends show a spike in last-minute liens filed by disgruntled creditors, or even the spouses themselves. Imagine if, 24 hours before Marcus and Brenda are set to close, Marcus's divorce attorney files a lien against the property for unpaid legal fees. Without the 48-hour refresh, the agent wouldn't find out until the buyer's lender pulls the funding at the literal hour of closing. By identifying the lien early, the agent can facilitate a payoff from Marcus's specific share of the proceeds, preventing the entire sale from collapsing. The second step involves the verification of the Qualified Domestic Relations Order, or QDRO, if the real estate proceeds are being used to offset other assets like retirement accounts. While the agent does not draft the QDRO, they must understand its impact on the net sheet. In 2026, we see many cases where the house is the only liquid asset. The agent's net sheet, the document that shows exactly how much money everyone gets, must be a mirror image of the court's order. If there is a dispute over who pays for a broken water heater discovered during the final walkthrough, the agent does not let it become a new legal battle. They have a pre-authorized escrow holdback agreement that allows them to set aside a specific amount of money from the proceeds to cover the repair, allowing the sale to close while the attorneys argue over the bill later. Data from recent 2026 case studies suggests that the most dangerous variable at the closing table is actually the child support lien. In many U.S. jurisdictions, any past due child support automatically attaches to real property. The demographic of the modern divorce agent includes those who proactively search the state's child support enforcement database before the home is even listed. If Marcus owes $15,000 in back support, that money is legally required to be paid at the closing table before he sees a dime of his equity. The specialized agent identifies this early, manages Marcus's expectations, and ensures the title company is prepared to issue the check directly to the state agency. This prevents a last-minute shock that could lead to Marcus sabotaging the sale out of anger. Another layer of the 2026 closing masterclass is the management of the wire transfer itself. Wire fraud has become a catastrophic risk in real estate. For a divorcing couple, the suspicion is often internal. Brenda might fear that Marcus has somehow redirected the entire proceeds of the sale to a private account. The agent mitigates this by using an independent third-party escrow service that requires dual-factor authentication from both parties and their respective attorneys before any funds are moved. The agent's role is to act as the neutral observer, who confirms that the instructions match the court order exactly. The complexity of the demographic of the divorce agent in 2026 is further illustrated by how they handle the post-closing transition. Historically, once the house sold, the agent's job was over. Today, the agent often manages the handoff to a specialized relocation service or a rental specialist who understands the unique credit challenges of someone who has just gone through a divorce. They understand that while the house is sold, the family's housing journey is in a state of fragile transition. But what happens when the dust settles and the neighborhood looks back at the sale? In many cases, a divorce sale can set a new, lower ceiling for property values in an entire area if not handled correctly. How does the elite agent protect the broader market while serving their specific clients? And as we look toward the final parts of this deep dive, we have to ask the most futuristic question of all. How is artificial intelligence in 2026 beginning to predict which marriages will end in a house sale before the couple even knows it themselves? In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to look at the predictive analytics of divorce real estate. We will explore the controversial new tools used by the top 1% of agents to identify distressed properties before they hit the market, the ethics of AI-driven lead generation in family law, and the demographic shift toward the algorithm-assisted agent. You will see how the tech-savvy specialists of 2026 are using data to find the houses that need to be sold, often months before a divorce petition is even filed. The transition from reactive to proactive real estate is the hallmark of the 2026 specialist. Historically, a real estate agent was a passive recipient of information. They waited for a phone call, a referral, or a listing presentation. But in the current year, the demographic of the elite divorce real estate agent has shifted toward the predictive analyst. These professionals are no longer just looking at who has already filed for divorce, they are looking at who is about to. This shift is driven by a massive influx of big data and machine learning tools that have turned the traditional neighborhood canvassing model on its head. Imagine a case study in Charlotte, North Carolina, involving an agent named Jordan. Jordan represents the new demographic of tech-literate specialists who treat data as their primary inventory. In 2026, Jordan uses a software suite that assigns a high probability of dissolution, or HPD score, to every property in his target zip code. This isn't science fiction. It is the result of historical trends in consumer behavior analytics that have been refined over the last decade. The AI analyzes anonymized data points that, when viewed in isolation, mean very little, but when clustered, create a clear picture of domestic transition. Step by step, the algorithm looks for specific triggers. Trigger 1 is the divergence of consumer spending. When a household that previously shared a single Amazon Prime account or a joint credit card begins to split into two distinct spending patterns, such as the sudden purchase of two separate gym memberships in different parts of town or a spike in spending at local storage facilities, the HPD score moves upward. Trigger 2 is the change in utility usage. In 2026, smart meters provide real-time data on water and electricity consumption. A sudden, sustained drop in evening electricity usage followed by a spike in morning usage can indicate that one party has moved out, or that the occupants are living in separate wings of a large home. Trigger 3 is the search for legal or financial services. While individual search histories are protected, localized trends in searches for family law mediation or forensic accounting are mapped to specific neighborhoods. When Jordan's dashboard flags a property with an 88% HPD score, he does not knock on the door and ask about their marriage. That would be a catastrophic breach of professional ethics and a sure way to destroy his reputation. Instead, the demographic of the modern agent uses what we call the invisible outreach strategy. Jordan sends a highly targeted direct mail piece or a digital ad that focuses on maximizing home value during life transitions. He positions himself as a specialist in equity protection and complex valuations. Historical data from 2024 and 2025 shows that couples in the early, unfiled stages of a split are far more likely to engage with an agent who offers a neutral, data-driven assessment of their home's worth than one who tries to sell them on a standard listing. This predictive demographic of agents is also defined by their relationship with the local legal community. In 2026, the top-tier divorce agent is often the person who provides the preliminary valuation before the divorce is even filed. Attorneys now use these agents as a triage service. Imagine if you are an attorney and a new client walks in. One of the first questions is, what is the house worth and can we afford to keep it? The old-school agent would give a quick comparative market analysis. The 2026 specialist provides a full forensic equity report. This report includes a deep dive into the 1031 exchange potential of the property, the impact of current interest rates on a potential buyout, and a neighborhood volatility index. The demographic shift is also visible in the age and background of these agents. We are seeing a significant number of former data scientists and paralegals entering the real estate field specifically to work the divorce niche. They are comfortable with the cold truth of the data. They understand that in a high-inflation, high-interest rate environment like 2026, the house is no longer just a home. It is a financial instrument that must be managed with surgical precision. These agents are often in their late 30s to early 50s, an age demographic that correlates with having high emotional intelligence combined with technical proficiency. Let us look at the ethical and legal guardrails that have evolved alongside this tech. In 2026, the California Consumer Privacy Act and similar state laws have created a tightrope for these agents. Historical trends show that any agent using predictive data must maintain a strict firewall. They cannot share their HPD scores with lenders or other third parties. Case studies from 2025 highlight several instances where agents were fined for using predictive data to help investors target distressed sellers. The professional demographic of the divorce agent in 2026 is hyper-aware that their access to this data is a privilege that requires a high level of fiduciary responsibility. They use the data to offer help, not to exploit. Furthermore, the 2026 agent uses AI to manage the communication temperature during the listing period. When a listing goes live, the agent often uses a sentiment analysis tool to monitor the emails and texts between the spouses and the agent. If the AI detects a spike in high-conflict language, words associated with blame, stalling, or hidden agendas, it alerts the agent to intervene before a legal motion is filed. This allows the agent to act as a preemptive mediator. For example, if the AI flags that the husband is consistently using delay language regarding the home inspection, the agent can step in with a neutral, data-backed explanation of why a delay will cost both parties 5% of their final equity due to market shifts. This level of depth in the 2026 demographic shows that the role has become a hybrid of an economist, a technologist, and a diplomat. The agent is the human interface for a massive amount of cold, hard data. They take the HPD scores, the utility triggers, and the spending patterns and turn them into a graceful exit strategy for a family in crisis. This is how the top 1% of agents are maintaining their volume in a market that is otherwise stagnant. They aren't finding more clients. They are finding the right clients earlier than anyone else. However, even with the best predictive data and the most advanced AI sentiment analysis, there is one area where the machine always fails and the human agent must take total control: the valuation war. This is the moment when the data says the house is worth $1 million, the husband says it's worth $800,000 because he wants to buy her out, and the wife says it's worth $1.2 million because she wants more cash to move. This is the point where all the tech in the world takes a backseat to the raw, visceral conflict of a divided interest. In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to break down the mechanics of the valuation war. We will explore the specific forensic appraisal techniques used in 2026 to settle disputes, the role of the retrospective appraisal in court, and the step-by-step negotiation tactics agents used to bring two warring parties to a single defensible number. You will see how the modern agent handles the most difficult conversation in real estate, telling a homeowner that their emotional attachment to a property is worth exactly $0 in the eyes of the law. The valuation war is where the abstract concept of divorce meets the hard, unforgiving reality of the United States banking system. In 2026, the demographic of the elite divorce real estate agent has evolved from a simple pricing expert to a high-level negotiator who understands that in a courtroom, feelings are not an asset class. Historically, the process of valuing a home in a divorce was a battle of the brokers. The husband would find an agent who would provide a lowball price to facilitate a cheaper buyout, and the wife would find an agent who would provide a pie-in-the-sky number to maximize her cash settlement. This created a stalemate that wasted months of time and thousands of dollars in legal fees. In the modern landscape of 2026, the specialized agent has replaced this biased tug-of-war with a process known as the forensic valuation protocol. Imagine a case study in the high-growth market of Denver, Colorado. We have two characters, Jennifer and Michael, who are ending a 15-year marriage. They bought their home in 2011 for $300,000, and today it is worth approximately $1.2 million. Michael, who is a high-earning software executive, wants to keep the house and buy out Jennifer's interest. Naturally, he is focused on every crack in the driveway, the aging roof, and the outdated kitchen. He wants the valuation to be as low as possible. Jennifer, on the other hand, is looking at the gleaming comparable sales in the neighborhood and remembers every upgrade they ever made. She views the home through the lens of her emotional investment and her need for a large down payment on a new life. She wants the valuation to be at the absolute ceiling of the market. This is where the specialized agent, an expert named Sarah in this scenario, steps in. Sarah's demographic profile is typical of the 2026 elite. She holds a master's degree in conflict resolution and is a certified real estate appraiser. Her approach is step-by-step and purely data-driven. Step 1 is the neutral inspection. Sarah does not walk through the home with Jennifer or Michael separately. She conducts a joint walkthrough, or, if the conflict is too high, she uses a high-resolution LiDAR camera to create a digital twin of the property. This digital twin captures every detail, from the brand of the appliances to the exact square footage of the crawl space. In 2026, these scans are often admitted as primary evidence in family law proceedings because they remove the element of human bias. Historical trends show that the most contentious part of valuation is often the date of valuation. In a standard sale, the value is whatever a buyer is willing to pay today. In a divorce, the law often requires a retrospective appraisal. This is a valuation of the property as of a specific date in the past, such as the date of separation or the date the divorce petition was filed. Imagine if Michael and Jennifer separated in early 2024 when the market was peaking, but the trial isn't happening until mid-2026 after a local market correction. The value could have shifted by over $100,000. The specialized agent must be able to perform a time-traveling analysis of the market, using historical data sets to defend a price that no longer exists in the present day. The second step in Sarah's protocol is the deferred maintenance audit. This is a forensic breakdown of what it would cost to bring the home to a top-tier retail condition. Michael might claim the house needs $80,000 in work, but Sarah brings in independent, third-party contractors to provide written bids. By providing the court with actual repair estimates rather than guesses, she creates a defensible net equity number. If the house is worth $1.2 million but needs $40,000 in essential repairs, the court sees a clear, logical path to a $1.16 million valuation. This removes the emotional weight of Michael's complaints and Jennifer's nostalgia. The demographic of the 2026 agent also understands the intersection of zoning and value. In many U.S. cities, recent 2025 and 2026 legislative changes have allowed for increased density on single-family lots. An agent who doesn't understand that the property can now be subdivided, or have an accessory dwelling unit added, is leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars of equity on the table. In our Denver case study, Sarah identifies that the lot has recently been rezoned for an ADU. This discovery increases the fair market value by 15%, a fact that Michael tried to ignore and Jennifer didn't know. By bringing this to light, the agent ensures that the marital estate is divided fairly according to the highest and best use of the land, not just its current state. Step by step, Sarah then compiles the neutral valuation report. This is a 40-page document that is the antithesis of a standard real estate brochure. It contains no flowery language about cozy corners or perfect for entertaining. Instead, it is a clinical analysis of market absorption rates, volatility indexes, and forensic comparable analysis. Sarah presents this report to both attorneys simultaneously. Because she has established herself as a neutral expert who cannot be bought by either side, her number often becomes the stipulated value. This means both parties agree to use her number as the basis for their settlement, avoiding a $10,000 appraisal battle in court. The most difficult conversation Sarah has in this process is the $0 talk. She sits down with Jennifer and Michael, separately of course, and explains that while they may have brought their children home to this house, or spent every weekend for a decade gardening, those memories have a market value of zero. In the eyes of the law in 2026, the house is a commodity. It is a pile of lumber, brick, and debt. By stripping away the sentimentality, the agent helps the clients move from a state of mourning to a state of transaction. This is the hallmark of the modern demographic: the ability to be empathetic to the human struggle while remaining ruthlessly objective about the asset. Data from the historical trends of 2026 indicates that when a specialized divorce agent is involved in the valuation process, the likelihood of a case going to a full trial drops by over 60%. Most couples, when presented with a truly neutral, forensic, and defensible number, realize that fighting over a 5% discrepancy in value will cost them 10% in legal fees. The agent, in this capacity, serves as the ultimate reasonableness filter for the judicial system. But even with a perfect valuation, the war isn't always over. What happens when the court orders a sale, but the market is in a temporary freeze? What happens when no traditional buyer wants to step into the middle of a lawsuit? This has led to the rise of a new demographic in 2026, the specialized institutional divorce buyer. These are firms that specifically target high-conflict properties, offering a quick exit for families who can't wait for a traditional 90-day close. In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to explore the world of the institutional divorce buyer and the silent investor. You will learn how the top agents in 2026 use these specialized funds to create an instant clean break for their clients, the pros and cons of taking a lower cash offer to end the legal battle, and the secret tactics used to negotiate with these firms to protect the last remaining shreds of a family's equity. You will see how the exit strategy is being rewritten for the modern American divorce. The exit strategy for the modern American divorce has reached a technological and financial peak in 2026, shifting the very demographic of who actually buys the marital home. Historically, we looked at the real estate market as a collection of families moving from one house to another. But as we navigate the complexities of property division in 2026, a new player has emerged that the specialized divorce agent must master: the institutional divorce buyer. This demographic is not composed of families looking for a backyard for their golden retriever. It is composed of algorithmic matrimonial asset funds that specialize in providing what we call the clean break. Imagine a case study in Nashville, Tennessee, involving an agent named Thomas. He is representing a couple, David and Maria, who have been locked in a legal stalemate for 18 months. Their legal fees have already surpassed $80,000, and the house, a beautiful 4-bedroom Craftsman, is slowly falling into disrepair because neither party wants to pay for maintenance on an asset they are about to lose. In previous decades, Thomas would have been forced to put this house on the open market, deal with hundreds of lowball offers from opportunistic house flippers, and manage the nightmare of Maria refusing to leave for showings while David refused to pay for a stager. In 2026, Thomas pivots to the institutional divorce buyer. These are specialized private equity firms that have developed proprietary software to analyze court records. They don't just see a house for sale, they see a court-ordered liquidation. They offer a specific value proposition: an all-cash, as-is purchase with a closing date that can happen in as little as 72 hours. The trade-off is typically a 5 to 8% discount below fair market value. For David and Maria, Thomas performs a step-by-step cost-benefit analysis. If they wait 90 days for a traditional retail buyer, they might get an extra $50,000, but they will spend $40,000 in additional legal fees, mortgage interest, and utility costs during that time. The potential outcome of the clean break is that they stop the financial bleeding immediately. The demographic of the specialized divorce agent in 2026 is someone who knows how to negotiate with these sharks without letting their clients get bitten. Thomas doesn't just accept the first offer from the matrimonial fund. He uses a tactic known as the multi-fund auction. He presents the property to 3 different institutional buyers simultaneously, forcing them to compete on the terms of the sale. In a divorce, the terms are often more important than the price. Thomas negotiates a use and occupancy period, allowing Maria to stay in the home for 30 days post-closing, while she secures her new apartment, without the pressure of a traditional buyer demanding the keys at the closing table. This flexibility is a hallmark of the 2026 exit strategy. Historical trends show that the rise of these institutional players is a direct response to the volatility of the 2024 and 2025 housing markets. When interest rates are high and inventory is low, the traditional retail buyer is cautious. They don't want to buy a house that smells like a lawsuit. The institutional buyer, however, is a cold, calculating entity. They have the capital to sit on the property, renovate it, and flip it or turn it into a high-end rental. The demographic of the agent must include a deep understanding of these funds' internal rate of return requirements. By knowing exactly what the fund needs to see to justify the purchase, the agent can position the marital home as a prime turnkey investment, even if the interior looks like a battleground. Another emerging demographic in 2026 is the silent investor. These are smaller, private bridge capital groups often formed by family offices. They serve a very specific role in the divorce ecosystem: the buyout bridge. Imagine if David actually wanted to keep the house but couldn't qualify for a new mortgage on his own because his debt-to-income ratio was skewed by the pending divorce. The specialized agent connects David with a silent investor who provides the capital for David to buy out Maria's interest today. In exchange, the investor takes a small equity stake in the home, which David can buy back in 3 to 5 years once his finances have stabilized. This strategy preserves the home for one of the spouses and prevents a forced sale, which is often the best emotional outcome for the children involved. Step by step, the 2026 agent must document these non-traditional offers for the court. A judge will often look with suspicion on a sale that is below the appraised fair market value. The agent's forensic equity report becomes the shield. Thomas provides the court with a side-by-side comparison. Option A, the retail sale. Estimated time on market, 120 days. Estimated holding costs, $15,000. Risk of sabotage high. Estimated net to parties, $400,000. Option B, the institutional clean break. Time on market, 3 days. Holding costs, $0. Risk of sabotage 0. Estimated net to parties, $392,000. When presented with these hard numbers, the court almost always approves the institutional sale because it provides the most certain and least litigious path forward. The professionalization of this niche also involves the management of the shadow equity. In 2026, many high-value homes have solar leases, smart home subscriptions, and even fractional ownership components. The institutional buyer will often try to use these as leverage to lower the price. The specialized agent must be a master of these contracts, ensuring that the solar lease is properly transferred or paid off from the proceeds, so that it doesn't become a post-closing nightmare for the divorced couple. Data from 2025 case studies suggest that agents who fail to account for these invisible liens see their closings delayed by an average of 22 days, often resulting in the buyer walking away. As we look at the historical trajectory, we see that the demographic of the divorce agent has moved from being a facilitator of a move to being a facilitator of a financial divorce. They are the architects of the exit. They understand that for their clients, the house is no longer a home. It is a cage. By bringing in institutional capital and private bridge investors, the 2026 agent is providing the key to that cage. They are allowing families to skip the months of public humiliation that come with a traditional divorce sale, and move straight to the part where they can begin to heal and rebuild. But even with the most sophisticated financial exit strategy, there is one final massive hurdle that every divorce real estate agent in U.S. history has had to face. It is the moment when the last box is packed, the house is empty, and the reality of the new normal sets in. How does the agent handle the relocation ripple effect? What happens when the sale of the big suburban house creates two smaller, competing buyers in a market with zero inventory? And as we conclude this masterclass, we have to look at the ultimate demographic shift. How the divorce agent of 2026 is becoming the primary advisor for the next generation of American housing. In the final part of this masterclass, we are going to tie it all together. We will look at the long-term impact of divorce real estate on the U.S. economy, the post-divorce reentry strategy for buyers, and the step-by-step blueprint for anyone looking to enter this high-stakes, high-reward professional demographic. You will see the complete picture of how the divorce real estate agent has become the most important, yet least understood, professional in the American housing market. The final chapter of this deep dive will reveal the true cost of a broken home and the true value of a professional who knows how to fix the financial aftermath. The financial aftermath of a divorce sale is not a static event. It is a catalyst that triggers a phenomenon known as the relocation ripple effect. In the 2026 real estate market, we have observed that a single divorce listing does not merely represent one property leaving the inventory. It statistically represents the creation of two new, urgent housing demands. This ripple effect is a massive, often overlooked driver of the United States economy. When we look at the historical trends of the mid-2020s, we see that for every one marital home sold, there is a 1.7 ratio of new household formations within the following 12 months. This means that the divorce real estate agent is essentially the primary architect of the next phase of their clients' lives. Imagine a case study involving a character named Samuel in late 2026. Samuel has just finalized the sale of a large suburban estate in suburban Virginia. After the mortgage is paid, the liens are settled, and the legal fees are deducted, he is left with a liquid sum of $300,000. In a vacuum, Samuel is a well-capitalized buyer. However, the reality of the 2026 market is that his credit profile has been bruised by the litigation process, and his debt-to-income ratio is skewed by newly mandated alimony and child support payments. Samuel represents a significant demographic of the American public, the well-funded but technically unqualified buyer. This is where the specialized agent's role enters its most critical phase, known as the post-divorce reentry strategy. Step by step, the agent must act as a bridge between Samuel's current financial ruins and his future housing stability. The first step in this protocol is the mortgageability audit. In 2026, top-tier agents work with specialized lenders who understand how to treat maintenance and support payments as qualifying income or stabilizing debts. They don't just look at a credit score. They look at the marital settlement agreement to prove to underwriters that the financial instability of the past 18 months was a temporary legal event, not a permanent character trait. Historical trends show that without this specialized advocacy, many individuals like Samuel would be forced into a high-cost rental cycle that would eventually erode their remaining equity. The demographic shift we are witnessing in 2026 also highlights the silver splitter phenomenon on a macroeconomic scale. These are individuals over the age of 60 who are divorcing after 30 or 40 years of marriage. For this demographic, the sale of the family home is not just about moving, it is about the total restructuring of a retirement plan. The divorce agent in these cases often works alongside a team of wealth managers to ensure that the proceeds from the home are rolled into assets that provide immediate cash flow. We see a rising trend in 2026 of these clients using their equity to purchase duplexes or homes with accessory dwelling units, allowing them to live in one portion while generating rental income from the other. This isn't just real estate. It is social engineering designed to prevent elderly poverty in the wake of domestic dissolution. For those looking to enter this elite demographic of real estate professionals, the blueprint in 2026 is rigorous. It is no longer enough to be a high-volume salesperson. The modern masterclass student must follow a specific, step-by-step educational path. Step 1 is the mastery of the family law code in their specific jurisdiction. You cannot be a neutral expert if you do not understand the difference between a pendant light order and a final judgment. Step 2 is obtaining a certification in high-conflict mediation. Data suggests that agents who can de-escalate a shouting match in a kitchen are 10 times more likely to reach the closing table than those who rely on traditional sales techniques. Step 3 is the development of a forensic vendor network, a team of stagers, inspectors, and contractors who are trained to work in environments where the owners may not be on speaking terms. The economic impact of this niche is staggering. In 2026, it is estimated that divorce-related real estate transactions account for over $200 billion in annual sales volume across the United States. This is not a submarket. It is a cornerstone of the industry. The specialized agents who manage this volume are the unsung stabilizers of the housing market. By preventing foreclosures, mitigating property waste, and ensuring that equity is preserved rather than litigated away, they prevent the localized market crashes that can happen when high-value homes are abandoned during a messy split. They are the guardians of the neighborhood's price floor. Consider the potential outcomes when a family does not have access to this specialized demographic of agent. In many historical case studies from the early 2020s, we see properties that sat on the market for 300 days, eventually selling for 60 cents on the dollar because the owners couldn't agree on a repair or a price reduction. This doesn't just hurt the family. It hurts the neighbors whose appraisals are now dragged down by a distressed comparable sale. In 2026, the divorce specialist prevents this by treating the property as a neutral business entity. They remove the emotion and replace it with a court-backed management plan. As we conclude this deep dive, we must look at the next generation of American housing. The children who grow up in these houses, watching their parents navigate the intersection of law and property, are developing a much more clinical and pragmatic view of homeownership. They are the future demographic of buyers who will prioritize legal protections, prenuptial property agreements, and asset liquidity over the romanticized views of the past. The divorce real estate agent of today is training the buyers of tomorrow to be more resilient and more informed. The true value of the professional in this space is found in the silence after the closing. It is the moment when the client, who 18 months ago was facing the total collapse of their financial world, walks into a new, smaller, but stable home. The agent has not just sold a house, they have salvaged a future. They have taken a situation that historically ended in financial ruin and turned it into a manageable transition. This is the ultimate promise of the niche, that even in the most high-stakes, high-conflict moments of U.S. history, there is a path to a clean break and a new beginning. But as the market continues to evolve, new challenges are appearing on the horizon. We are starting to see the emergence of the AI-driven divorce arbitrator, a digital entity that claims it can replace both the lawyer and the agent. Can a machine truly navigate the raw, human volatile emotions of a house tour? Can an algorithm sense when a spouse is lying about a hidden mold problem to spite their ex? The battle between human intuition and machine efficiency is the next great frontier in the demographics of real estate. If you have followed this masterclass from part 1 to part 10, you now possess a deeper understanding of the most complex niche in the American housing market than 99% of the population. You understand the history, the forensics, the legal traps, and the psychological warfare. But the story of American real estate never truly ends. Even as we solve the problem of the divorce sale, a new demographic crisis is looming in the world of inheritance and probate. In our next deep dive series, we will transition from the ending of marriages to the ending of eras. We will explore the high-stakes world of the probate real estate specialist, the fight over the multi-generational family farm, and the secret legal maneuvers used to protect a family's legacy when the patriarch passes away without a will. The war for the American dirt is just getting started. Stay tuned for the first part of our next masterclass, The Inheritance Inquest.